be happy to answer questions.
Thank. Iris.
You're buy ice cream, Iris. Yeah, Iris buying ice cream.
Sorry.
Council members, any questions of staff?
Other than great job, great job.
Thank you. Anyone in the public, any questions on this item? All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion on this item. Actually, this is just to accept the report, so don't need a motion, correct? All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 13, which I had requested pulled. This is just, I want to make everyone aware that this item number 13 is an amendment to the contract for the city manager. And I'll just give you the background real quick. The city and Dylan Feek entered into an employment agreement in February 2016. That's when we first hired Dylan, providing for the terms and conditions of employment of Dylan as the city manager for the city of Calistoga. Pursuant to the agreement, the city council conducted a performance review and evaluation of the city manager, which we did recently, as you're aware, and gave direction to the city attorney to prepare the attached amendment of the employment agreement. The First Amendment provides, which means it's the first extension of his contract, provides for an increase in salary to $189,371, which represents a 5% increase over his previous salary. In addition, the Deferred Compensation Plan, known as ICMA-RC 401A, which is a money market plan, the city will pay an annual administrative fee of $1,000, and the city manager shall pay all future contributions to this plan. There's no match by the city on that item. And the city council did conduct the review process, and as a result, issued a merit increase of 5% for the city manager. And it is included in this coming budget year, correct, Gloria? Thank you very much. Council members, any questions on this?
I'd just like to say that this is the first raise in 2.5 years. So, well deserved.
All right, anyone in the audience have any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Barnes, a second by Councilmember Kraus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to public hearings. Item number 15, consideration of a resolution authorizing the levying and collection of assessments for the Palisades Subdivision Landscape Maintenance District for fiscal year 2018 and 19. The recommended action is to adopt the resolution, and I believe I have a recusal here, or if not, two.
Yes, I have to recuse myself because I live close to this assessment district.
I had to recuse myself as well. For
Okay, so we have Councilmember Kraus and Councilmember Lopez Ortega recusing themselves on this item because of a proximity issue. Simply means they live too close to the properties in discussion. So as soon as they exit the building, we will move on from there. Taking us through this item this evening will be Mike Kern, Public Works Director, and City Engineer. Mike, welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Mike Kern, Public Works Department. The item before you this evening is a public hearing to receive any protests regarding the proposed landscaping and maintenance district assessment of $35 a year per parcel within the Palisades subdivision. There are 44 parcels that are affected by this. The proposed assessment would generate $1,540 a year for the purposes of maintaining the landscaping that was a requirement or a condition of the subdivision. Based on our calculations, the revenue generated from the proposed assessment would be about $980 short of what it's actually going to take to maintain the landscaping. Very similar to what we've done in the past, and it's basically been picked up by the general fund and is included in the budget that you're going to consider this evening. Your council has done several actions to get to this point. You've directed the preparation of the engineer's report, received the engineer's report, and you set tonight as the public hearing. So staff is recommending that your council open the public hearing. At the close of the public hearing, there are no more than 50% protest to the continuation of the assessment, then your council can adopt the resolution as included in your packet. Includes direction then that we would file the paperwork with the assessor's office and the tax collector, and that would be put on the next tax roll for those parcels affected. So with that, I'd just like to add that the assessment is the same as it was last year. That's why we're going through a protest hearing rather than a full-blown balloted 218 process. So with that, recommend you open up the hearing, and then if you have any questions afterwards, I'm here to answer.
Thank you very much. Council members, any questions? Have we received any protests?
No.
Written, okay. This is a public hearing. I will open it to the public. Is there anyone wishing to comment on this item? Not seeing any movement toward the lectern, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for consideration, or will entertain a motion as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford, a second by Council Member Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 16, consideration, very similar, consideration of a resolution authorizing the levying and collection of assessments for the Silverado Place Landscape Maintenance District for fiscal year 2018-19. Do we still have a proximity issue with both council members that are still out of the room? Okay, let it be noted. Councilmember Kraus, Councilmember Lopez Ortega are recused because of proximity. Mike Kern, more of the same.
More of the same, different location. So this is a public hearing, or will be a public hearing. There are 15 lots affected by the proposed assessment. The proposed assessment is $66.67 per year per parcel. It'll generate $1,000 a year for maintenance of landscaping that was a condition of the subdivision approval. Approximately $400 annually would be contributed by the general fund to pick up the shortfall. Again, it is the same assessment as last year. So we're doing this through a protest hearing, as I mentioned before. It's basically the same song, just a different record player. So with that, recommend that your council conduct the public hearing. There are no more than 50% protests. You are within your authority to adopt the resolution directing us to levy the assessment through the tax collector and assessor's office. So with that, I'm here for any questions at the end of the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Have we received any written protests to this point? So understanding we have a gap on the previous and a gap on this, at what point do we consider the increase in this levy?
So we're narrowing the gap.
Okay.
We're being very diligent in the level of effort that we put in to try and get it as close to being commensurate with the resources that are provided through the assessment. So I think within the next couple of years, we should have that down to something that's more palatable than now, and certainly more palatable than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the council on this item? Not seeing anyone move toward the lectern, I'll close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the council for further consideration. We'll entertain a motion as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. You guys didn't want to switch on that one?
Yeah, we're happy.
A motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford, a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Flamson, if you can let them know, thank you. Would appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 17 as soon as the two council members are reseated. You guys even went out separate doors so you couldn't talk about it or anything. That was impressive. Please note, Councilmember Lopez Ortega and Councilmember Kraus have rejoined the council. Item number 17, consideration of receiving conceptual plans for Silverado Trail Gateway improvements. The recommended action is to receive the plans and direct the staff. Taking us through this item this evening will be Planning and Building Director Lynn Goldberg. Director Goldberg, welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. The community has long desired public improvements such as parking and restrooms near the Oat Hill Mine Trail trailhead. These improvements are called for in the Calistoga General Plan and the Urban Design Plan, which designate the area around the intersection of Silverado Trail, Lincoln Avenue, and Lake Street as the Silverado Trail Gateway. This area is also the northerly terminus of the Napa Valley Vine Trail, which, as you know, is a multi-use pathway that is planned to ultimately extend to the Vallejo Ferry Terminal. As it happens, the city owns a triangular-shaped parcel of approximately a half acre at the southeast corner of the Silverado Trail Lincoln Avenue intersection. And one of the council's priority projects this year is to work with other agencies in the community to provide facilities for users of both trails at this location. To this end, the city has hired GSM Landscape Architects to assist with developing a plan that would incorporate the desired amenities, as well as provide an entry statement that conveys a sense of the community. GSM has developed 3 schematic designs. Besides providing parking and restrooms, all of the plans include features such as landscaping, shaded picnicking and gathering areas, information kiosk with trail maps, bicycle racks, safety lighting, Calistoga landmark sign, trash recycling and pet waste containers, and the Vine Trail segment along Lincoln Avenue adjoining this property. The 3 designs also include environmental and green betterments such as electric vehicle charging stations and solar photovoltaic panels. Kathy, could you? I'm just going to briefly review the 3 schemes. No decision is being requested of the council tonight, but I just wanted to provide you an overview of them. So Scheme A includes a curvilinear design of the parking lot and the central area. It would feature 16 parking stalls and an open corner concept adjacent to the intersection of Lincoln Avenue and Silverado Trail. Scheme B is more of a block type approach with sharper corners. This option includes 1 more parking space for a total of 17. And again, all of these feature the components that I just outlined in my presentation. And then Scheme C orients the main parking area towards Silverado Trail, park area, and the hillside. It has the least amount of parking, however, at 10 spaces. So staff is recommending that the council initiate the public review process that allows GSM to present the design concepts, answer questions, and receive feedback, with the goal of identifying a preferred conceptual design that can be further refined, and we'll also get a cost analysis. This outreach would include a public workshop, as well as meetings with project stakeholders such as the Calistoga Active Transportation Advisory Committee, the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, the Napa County Regional Park and Open Space District, the Napa Valley Vine Trail Coalition, Caltrans, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we're asking for a direction that we begin the outreach process to the various stakeholders for this project.
Thank you very much. Council members, questions of staff?
Yeah, I do have a, Kathy, can you put that back up, please?
Which one would you like?
A,
Well,
B,
they're
or
all-
C?
They're all the same for the question I asked. Where do the cars enter? Is that the one off on the mid-right?
Actually, tentatively, the cars would be entering from just north, a driveway from the Calistoga Motor Lodge, formerly.
Okay,
So
so
at the southern end of it.
on this
Yeah.
schematic,
Do
on
I
the
have
far
it?
right in the middle of the picture.
Do I have a thing on? Top thing. Oop, there it is, right there. So Calistoga Motor Lodge currently has a driveway at the northern end of its project, and they have agreed to provide us an easement in concept. And so that would be the access point. We really don't want anybody accessing off of Silverado Trail or Lincoln any closer to the intersection up at the north here. So just, I'm sorry, a point of orientation. This is Kingdom Hall over here on Silverado Trail, Lincoln Avenue, and then the Motor Lodge down here.
So all 3 of them enter there.
Yes, they would all
And
have that
road on
southerly
the,
entry
it
point.
looks like a road on middle of the right-hand side?
This is the
That goes to-
sidewalk that's existing from Kingdom Hall. It's a
Okay.
walkway, actually. And so that would continue, extends all the way to Kingdom Hall.
And that would be the only entrance into this facility?
The only vehicular entrance.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The Napa Valley Vine Trail segment would be along here, so and as well as extending across Motor Lodge, they'll be constructing that as part of their restaurant phase. So cyclists and pedestrians could enter from there.
Thank you.
Other
This is-
council members?
Something that I've long asked to get moved along. One of the things that impacts the neighborhood quite a bit there is the people that use the Oat Hill Mine Trail, and they park. There times when I suspect there's probably 50 cars parked there on a weekend, so it's very well used. I do want to make sure that we make a personal outreach to all the surrounding neighbors, including the Sonia Spencer, who is not very close to this, but her property is impacted by the parking that goes on around her house. Certainly the La Prima Pizza, looks like you've already made contact with the motel there, the Kingdom Hall should be.
Yes,
Made
absolutely.
completely aware of this, and we
Yes.
should take their input very seriously, as well as the house across the street. And like that, you're aware that this council inevitably gets somebody that comes in, nobody told me. So if we're doing this, let's make sure that folks have a personal invitation.
I have a couple comments. One is that intersection as a pedestrian or a bicyclist is very dangerous to cross because it's askew and you just don't quite have the orientation to see everybody, the traffic. Are you going to be including crosswalks in this plan?
Not as part of this phase. All of the designs basically get people to this point, and then we'll be working with a traffic engineer to design that part, working with Caltrans, working with the county. We obviously, we realize that that's a very problematic crossing. What we'd like to do is go ahead with this piece and get some consensus on that and continue working on the access across the street, recognizing that that's going to have to happen.
Okay. And then I guess my other question is, there's quite a few people that park right at the trailhead on the other side, and I'm not sure really where the property line is between the residence that's there and what would be considered, I don't know if it's county or
It's county,
county at that point.
yes.
Is it possible to make an improvement there to include some asphalt and improve the parking, and maybe it might be a part B to something like this, but I think there's certainly an opportunity to improve, because right now it's just dirt.
That's the kind of thing we're going to be working with the Napa County Regional Park and Open Space District for. They own the property, so they'll be a partner in this. So hopefully if they can contribute to our side of the street and our improvements, that's something that they could contribute on their side,
Okay.
as well as trash facilities and
I think
guides.
17 parking spaces is the most parking spaces that you get in here, and that makes a good dent in the parking problem. Even the other versions that have fewer spaces helps out completely, but I think Mike's correct. This isn't going to solve the whole problem. This is, though it does provide restrooms and a point where they can get water and rest a little bit, you're still going to have some issues out there.
It would be nice to just know if there's future available improvements that could be made to add additional parking, down the road, because obviously it's going to just get more and more crowded over time.
That's a possibility on the property across the street,
Right.
which is currently vacant. So
Yeah.
we're very aware of that. If it's ever developed, that would be something we'd be looking for the project to provide.
Right. Looks good.
Any other council members?
Can I say a little bit in Spanish?
Absolutely.
Para todas las personas que nos están acompañando, gracias por haber venido esta noche. Este tema que estamos discutiendo ahorita es acerca de arreglar, transformar la esquina de la calle Lincoln y el Silverado Trail, arreglarlo esa parte que se usa, muchos carros se estacionan allí de la gente que sube a la montaña a caminar. Entonces lo que están tratando de hacer es hay 3 diseños diferentes y se está tratando de hacer que se hagan estacionamientos, que se haga un baño, que se haga estaciones para bicicletas y todo eso para aumentar la seguridad y haber lugar donde la gente se pueda estacionar correctamente sin tener que estacionarse sobre la carretera. Si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta, pueden hacerla aquí o pueden, este apenas es el principio del proyecto. So, si tienen alguna pregunta o si tienen alguna idea, hagan favor de confirmarlo con nosotros.
All right, thank you. If there's anyone in the public that has any questions, other than giving your feedback on which design you like, there will be another meeting to address that matter. Iris?
So, este es el principio hay 3 diseños diferentes, entonces ahorita solamente se está presentando el plan y si tienen después alguna, como les dije, alguna opinión, una pregunta, una inquietud que ustedes tengan, pueden con todo gusto venir aquí con nosotros. Se va a tratar esto más ampliamente en otra junta también.
All right. Anyone? All right. Thank you, Lynn, very much. I think you have all the direction you need.
Okay, so we can proceed with the public
You may
outreach.
proceed. Council, is that by consensus? We may proceed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your work on this. Item number 18, consideration of discussion to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 1.12 nuisance abatement of the Calistoga Municipal Code relating to the time allowed to correct violations. The recommended action is consider the draft ordinance amendment and provide direction to staff. Taking us through this item this evening, well, starting us off to this item this evening will be City Manager Feek. Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the way we do other code amendments, what happens is the city usually brings something to the city council, makes you aware of, here's a code change we'd like to make. We'd like to start the process of doing the public notice, which then we have to hold a public hearing, we have to have multiple readings, and it starts the long, lengthy process for any time we change the code. So specifically on this one, it's really asking council to consider a code amendment, which would provide us an additional tool and what I'd call an ability to provide a quicker response when dealing with code enforcement activities. As you see, and really what I'm looking for from City Council tonight, I'll do the majority of the presentation. I have UD and the Chief here to answer any specific questions you might have about specific code activities. But I'm asking for council direction and support. If you are supportive, then we'll begin the process of initiating the code amendment, which is notice to the public, public hearing, and then come back to City Council meeting for the multiple readings. In working with the City Attorney, one of the issues that I had identified in speaking with UD is currently Chapter 1.12.060, which is part of our nuisance abatement chapter of the code. Item 3 provides a mandatory period, a minimum period of 10 days notice for code violations before a code enforcement officer can pursue further action. It creates what I would call an excessive delay in some cases, where when we want someone to, there's trash and debris in their backyard, we have to provide them notice. A lot of times certified mail, you get 10 days to fix it. What happens if the person is out of town, they don't get the notice, for someone who's calling and complaining, and it might be trash and debris, it might be an illegally parked vehicle in the front yard, it might be a RV that should be addressed. There's a whole variety of code enforcement activities where if it's not an immediate concern, if it's not creating a public health and safety hazard, I would recommend that we follow the code, which is provide a minimum 10 days notice. What I'm requesting from the City Council is that by resolution or by approval of city staff of the code enforcement officer, we adopt a schedule that provides different time frames for the different circumstances we have. The language, instead of reading the time frame shall be determined in the sole discretion of the enforcement officer, but shall not be less than 10 calendar days after the date of the notice of the order, that we strike that language and include it to read, the time frame shall be for a reasonable period of time based on the relevant circumstances, which may include the work and time required to correct the violation. The enforcement officer shall have the sole discretion in determining the time frame for taking action to correct the violation. One of the things that we know in working with the city attorney is there are certain code violations where if we issue an order to abate, if we don't provide adequate time, that if we were to go to court and pursue an abatement warrant from a judge, we have to have demonstrated that we provided them enough time. So we know that if it's a significant building or structure related issue, we can't give them 24 hours notice. we have to give a significant amount of time. We have to make concerted efforts over time. In this case, what the city attorney's office is recommending is give yourself, your code enforcement officer, the discretion to determine what's appropriate. That's enforceable. That's something that will hold up in court, and it will be up to the city in the future to make your case into what was considered appropriate. Right now, I don't currently have a draft schedule. We would bring that back as part of the public discussion. We would look at all of our different code enforcement activities, what's the most common and what's the most reasonable time frame. In my past, in the past where I've been employed, we adopted a schedule so that it was uniform across the city for all residents. You know, if you've got an inoperable vehicle, you got 24 hours to move it. If you've got trash that needs to be cleaned up, you got 24 hours to move it. If it's a health and safety hazard, you got to move it immediately, or you can be cited right now. There are different parameters that we'll want to adopt so that there's routine and there's consistency at the same time. There's much more flexibility than a minimum 10-day period. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. What I'm recommending at this point is we proceed with initiating the code amendment. If that's the case, we'll pursue that. Public notice to the public hearings scheduled in the coming months, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well as Judy and Chief Salat. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would this be the way that we would enforce any complaints on odors from a marijuana grow? Or would that be addressed through something else, through some other ordinance?
No, we would use this ordinance, and that's a great example because if there's an odor or a nuisance of that case, you wait 10 days, well, it's not an issue anymore. And so you want to be able to deal with that more expediently than have to wait 10 days. And again, you know, we've always been very compliance-oriented as far as we make contact, inform the individual that there is a violation, because they may not know that. We give them some time, but then so that's could be up to 10 days. And then when we do the notice of order or a written violation, that's an additional 10 days. And so by the time we're able to do something, it could be 20, 30 days later. And, you know, if you're a complainant or a neighbor, that's not acceptable. I mean, you know, that's where I get complaints because, you know, we do respond, you know, timely, but then because of the process we have to go through, all the neighbor sees, or as you get complaints, all you see is that nothing is being done. And even though we're working behind the scenes, we're kind of held at bay with this, with the way the procedure is currently written.
I know that's the potential issues surrounding marijuana is something that has been brought up to this council on several occasions, and to date, with the regulations that we've placed in, I understand we've had no complaints about it, but I think that the people who are concerned that they might be impacted at some point in the future would appreciate knowing that we have a process in place to handle things as quickly as possible.
Judy, as the primary code enforcement officer, I assume this 10-day wait period is a hindrance
It is.
for resolution?
Yes, specifically because our code enforcement manual allows for us to be able to give the responsible party an extension, a reasonable extension, specifically if they're showing goodwill and they're on their way to fixing this nuisance. So if you add every once in a while I don't get a receipt back from the post office that says that this notice was served, it could be a month and a half before I can prove that they've been noticed. So I think that if, I'm pretty confident that if this is amended, I could cut the time of that the case is open by a half, I think.
Okay. I know that council members are usually receivers of many complaints, quality of life, nuisance impact complaints, and it can be frustrating for us as well because it appears to the person who's filed the complaint that nothing is happening. And I do think 10 days is an unreasonable amount of time for someone to take action on some of these items. And having been, again, at the receiving end of that phone call multiple times, knowing that we're doing everything we can relative to what the ordinance allows, I am very supportive of this modification.
Playing the devil's advocate, would this open us up to any form of suit for discrimination? I'm the code enforcement officer. Mitch is my neighbor. I can't stand Mitch. He just really gets to me. And I report him, and I say, you got to have it done tomorrow, or I'm going to write you up and it'll be a big fine. Not because the problem is egregious, because I don't like you, and I'm the code enforcement officer. Playing devil's advocate, can we be sued for something like that? Am I thinking of problems that don't exist?
A couple of responses. Number one, today in the way the environment is we can be sued for anything.
True.
Second is that it needs to be reasonable, and obviously it's got to pass the reasonableness test. But when you are going to take action, it requires a violation of notice, and part of the policy is it allows for an appeal process, which is to come to the city council. So that would be one way to mitigate that. And so what I think is reasonable, or what Judy thinks is reasonable, she uses a notice saying it's got to be done tomorrow. And the person says, that's not reasonable, can go down and file an appeal, which then council holds it. And I don't have the timeline in my head right now, but until the city council is going to hear it and decide whether that's reasonable or not. So.
Okay, so that does answer my question. Thank you.
Any other council members with questions? Anyone in the public questions on this item? All right, so by consensus, or do you need action here? Council?
No action is required. If I have 5 nodding heads consensus to move forward, we'll start the process, formal public process. Thank you.
Council is in support of this item? Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 19, consideration of a discussion and resolution placing special TOT tax measure on the November 6th, 2018 ballot. The recommended action this evening is to adopt the resolution as presented. Taking us through this item will be City Manager Feek. Dylan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, you've considered this multiple times in recent months, formally on the agenda, but this has been an ongoing discussion for a long time. Just to remind you, at our meeting on June 5th, we discussed actual language, and prior to approval, we made a couple minor modifications to the language. In addition, the city sent the language, both the resolution, the ordinance. The resolution includes the actual ballot measure itself. We sent those to participating lodging members of the community who are part of the commercial side, who would be levying the tax, collecting the tax, to see if they had any concerns. It's my opinion that with the addition of the words workforce in the ballot measure in the resolution, to ensure that this money is intended for not just affordable, but affordable and workforce housing, that certainly satisfied some of the concerns of not having the language. To remind you, and even in comparing both our ordinance with the town of Yountville's ordinance today, we're using nearly identical ballot language. One of the approaches we've tried to take with the other cities, town, and the county is trying to use uniform language. Everyone is, to my knowledge, everyone is considering a ballot measure. Many of us are, including Calistoga, are trying to do something uniform to address a county-wide issue, as well as regional and statewide, all that. But certainly something that's here in Calistoga an issue. The action for consideration tonight is to approve the resolution placing the special TOT tax measure on the ballot. There's some ancillary documents we'll have to prepare, some work we'll have to do with the city attorney's office, with the city clerk. In addition, we will need to do an amendment to our resolution, which authorize a consolidated election. We'll do an amendment in July to make sure that the consolidated election includes placing this measure on the ballot as well. If this measure is placed on the ballot, it will require a 2/3 vote, majority vote from all Calistoga voters. This would levy an additional estimated $512,325 per year on visitors and those paying lodging taxes in the city of Calistoga. That money would be specifically carved out and earmarked for the purposes described in the ordinance and in the resolution. Talked about this a lot. Action in front of you tonight is to actually approve the resolution, which authorizes us to move forward and place this on the ballot. We'll be happy to answer any other questions, take any other feedback. I would remind you that, again, we still have one more meeting, which will be the second meeting in July. We don't have a meeting on July 3rd, but we do on July 17th. If you don't feel comfortable with this, we could certainly approve it by then, get it in time to the county, but at this point, we've reviewed it multiple times, we've shared it with the public, it's been publicly available. I believe it's ready. It's identical to what others are doing. Be happy to entertain any questions or provide any follow-up if needed.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, via the Chamber of Commerce, all 42 TOT collecting lodging properties within the city limits have seen this language. It was sent to the owners and/or operators or management, and the only comment that came back we've addressed by including the word workforce in this measure. Council members, questions on this? All right. Anyone in the public wishing to address this matter? All right. Close the public comment. Bring it back to the council for consideration. We'll entertain a motion on this item as presented.
Make a motion, we adopt the resolution.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Dylan. Moving on, last item on the agenda. We're almost there, folks. Well, we're here now, folks. Item number 20, consideration of a resolution adopting the operating and capital budgets for all funds for fiscal year 2018 and 19. The recommended action is to adopt the resolution. Taking us through this item will be Administrative Services Director Gloria Leon and City Manager Dylan Feek. Who's starting? Gloria.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for allowing me to be here to present to you the 2018-19 budget. You have seen it several times, but today we'll do the recap. Try to go through it as quickly as I can. So again, we'll be going through the budget process, the council goals, the actuals of 2017-18 and how they compare with 2018-19. We'll look at our several general fund department budgets. We'll look at the enterprise funds, development impact fees, capital projects, our equipment replacement fund, our special revenue fund, our debt schedule, which we talked about earlier about the refinancing of 4 bonds, and community funding requests. As you know, this is our annual budget process. We start back in March when we meet with the City Council and we set the dates for council goals. We hold some planning sessions, worksheets come in from our different departments, and we end up at the council workshop on May the 10th. We spent quite a bit of the day discussing the goals, and council gave us direction on how to reach those council goals. And so we then had the budget hearing on June the 5th, and here we are today to adopt the budget for 18-19. These are 7 council goals that directed our staff on how to prepare the 2018-19 budget. I'm going to go through it. Here is a revised 2017-18 year-end estimate from the last time that we met at the public hearing. There was one change made, and that was to the general fund. And this was in our revenues. We received $300,000 from the insurance for reimbursement from the Tubbs fire, so those additional revenues have been included in here. We anticipate to end 2017-18 with $7.2 million in our general fund. Our water operations, a little over $700,000. Our working capital for our water went a little over $1 million, as well as our wastewater operations. And then our wastewater capital, $1.1 million. Our equipment replacement fund, $713,441, and then special revenues, $8.3 million. So it looks very good. At the end of 2017-18, we've come a long ways to be able to have these kind of ending balances. We were, through the city manager's direction, we were able to set up some capital project and debt reserve funds. Actually, 3 funds have been established in response to our 2017 rate study. They were established in our general water, wastewater funds. And there's also a couple of items that the staff will be recommending to be used for fiscal year end from money that was additional funding that we were able to secure. And then you could also use this future funding for insurance proceeds that came from, coming from the Monhoff project. We've got some unspent capital projects from 2017-18, and then we've got salary savings from 2 vacant positions. And here's a list of the funding, partial payments that we received on May 21st. As I said earlier, we received $300,000 in regards to the Tubbs fire loss. June 12th, we received our first FEMA reimbursement for the Tubbs fire, and this is just in the fire department. What was spent on overtime and equipment was $119,193. And then we also just yesterday got a reimbursement from the Mount Washington fire claim as well for $33,131. So a total of $453,124 was received. And yeah, so this is again just a list of how that money was received from. The next slide is our general fund revenues. 2017-18, you know, when we came in at mid-year, and how we anticipate to end the 17-18. We've accumulated a little bit over $60,000 more than I had anticipated when I last spoke to you at the public hearing. And you see the big loss from the TOT during the fire, both in October and November, $400,000. But we've made up some of that. We made up some of that money from the reimbursement that we got of $300,000, as well as a couple of other line items, property tax more than we had anticipated, licenses and permits. So again, 17-18 revenues, $11,277,587. How does that compare to our projections for 18-19? About almost $300,000 more than 17-18. You can see the percentage changes. Property tax, 4.6% additional revenues we're anticipating. Our sales tax, 0.7%. And our TOT says 10.7%, but I just want you to know that that's based on the $5.7 billion in 17-18, but normally if we had not had the Tubbs fire, we would have an additional $400,000, so it's only a 3.5% increase that we're projecting on the TOT. And then the other large one, I think, is charges for services, 9.4%, and just to note, the other revenues, it says we've got a decrease of 89%, and again, that's because normally we don't receive a $300,000 reimbursement during the year. Our general fund expenditures for 18-19 as compared to 17-18, we're going to be up by 10.1% in expenditures, and you can see some of the large variances there. Support services, 19.9%. That is partly due, in fact, to the fact that we moved the community enrichment grants from Parks and Rec Department to the support services, and it's about, I'm thinking it's $237,000 in community enrichment grants. City Council, City Clerk, also moving up, and I'll kind of go more into details on the increases for each one of these departments as we move along the slides. City Council, City Clerk, the increases is due to the election coming up in 2018-19, and we also are doing succession planning for the Assistant City Clerk when the City Clerk retires in sometime in the future. Don't know exactly when.
She'll be working the TV when she's done.
Administrative services, support services, again, quite an increase in 18-19, and that's because we've moved the enrichment grants to this department. And there's also an increase in the Chamber of Commerce contract, and we're also going to be doing a TOT audit, and we've set aside some funds for that as well. This is just showing you our CalPERS rates and how much we are paying towards employees in the retirement system. The orange one is for our police department, and the yellow one is for our miscellaneous employees. And you'll notice in 17-18 on the graphs that you see a downward trend, and this is because we paid $1.8 million at the end of 2017, and this year in May we paid an additional $1 million towards our side fund. And so this has helped us reduce our costs by, I think this year we were able to save $98,000 over the next 30 years. And I'm trying to remember what it was the year before. It was $171,000 in 2017 that we were able to reduce it. So in total, we've already almost $270,000 per year that we've been able to save by making these additional payments. And this is just kind of shows you the actual dollars of what our retirement system is costing the city each year. Planning and services, a little bit more money being spent this year, and part of it's just due to having independent contractor, inspection contract for Silver Rose project, and then they're also going to be doing a building permit fee review. Fire services, also we see an increase from the year before, and this is due to, this will be the first year where we have the full 3 firefighters that we hired. This last year, there'll be a full year of their salary and benefits, PERS increases, and medical increases. Police services, one of the items that the police chief has recommended is a full-time code enforcement. They're just, he needs that additional staff. There's just quite a bit of complaints coming through, and they need someone to help with that. We have moved the Petaluma Animal Services out of his department and put it into the community enrichment grants. And also the Boys and Girls Club, part of the funding was coming out of the police services department, and we've moved that also out to the community services enrichment grants. Public Works, also an increase in their expenditures, and part of it's going to be, you know, they've had some vacant positions. We've hired a senior civil engineer. He's began work here on July, the first week in July. So we haven't had one all year long, so that is going to increase our expenditures. There's also a couple things they're asking for, stormwater training, downtown decorative lighting purchase, some asphalt materials, and I know there is also some other deferred repairs and maintenance that they are requesting for 2018-19. This next one's going to be the recreation services, and the city manager is going to be talking to you about this department at this point.
All right, council, if you will, I'm going to take a little bit of time. I wanted to do this one myself, just kind of break it up a little bit differently, talk a little bit about recreation. And for those of you who weren't at the meeting, which I don't believe we had very many people at the meeting at the fire station on May 10th, but one of the questions which was posed by the city council is what will it take to provide free programs at no cost? And so in a little bit over a month's time, we've been able to work internally and talk a little bit about what are the impacts, financial, impacts on the workforce, impacts on other departments, and really what does this mean if we were to provide free recreational programs to residents of Calistoga. To me, it gets me excited to think about how we could do this. I'm not aware of any other city in the area that does anything like this, that provides free programs to everyone who participates. It's kind of small to see, but it's small because there's so many items to list. Essentially, this is what I think a culmination of a lot of discussions over the years, since before I started work as a city manager, and even recently as I started work as a city manager, that the overall direction of the city has been how do we improve and maintain the quality of life for our residents? What kind of things can we do? You know, sure, we're going to have nice amenities in town, new facilities. This extra revenue is going to be providing the funding necessary for staff, for infrastructure, for new parks, for what have you. But essential programs which people want to participate in was a key point. In 2014, the city started providing free open swim to youth. Anyone under the age of 18 gets to swim for free at the pool. In 2015, we started opening the pool a little bit early than the I'll call it the spring season, so we could have swim team, we could provide additional recreation programs. In 2016, we really started what was called the preseason. If you remember, we brought in Debbie Swim School. We couldn't get enough lifeguards. We had an additional cost to do that. It was about $1,000 a day to bring in some extra staff. And we really started describing and telling the community no one gets turned away for economic hardship. Doesn't matter how much money you have. You should not be turned away from a recreational program. 2017, we start getting more and more requests of how do we provide free spaces, facilities, parks for use. People want to provide an activity for free, and the city has a fee associated with it. Can we waive it? Can we offer this at no cost? And then lastly, and this has really been going on for many years, but essentially recently, as we've been working on Boys and Girls Club contracts, the city leases spaces, leases buildings for $0 to $1 a year. We've always promoted use of Tedeschi Field, of Lokview Park, of the Monhof Center. Now, as we partner with Boys and Girls Club, we have these long-term lease agreements where we're trying to promote the use of our fields and spaces. So what would it take to, take that, what I'd call that last final step, and really provide these programs free at no cost? The recommendation that I'm going to have for you tonight, which is included in part of all of Gloria's budget, and I'll go through all the details later, is essentially for longevity, continuity, and for the long-term vision that we're trying to establish, I would recommend we call it Recreate Parks and Recreation Department. If you all remember, several years ago, probably 2010, 2011, the city had a Department of Parks and Recreation. Things changed over time. I'd like to recommend we create its own department with an appropriate level of expectation for how that department operates. What that would mean is essentially a couple things. First, we'd look at the structure of the department and change it a little bit to accommodate the growing and changing needs of what the council expectation is. The second thing, which is really the logistics, is reclassifying a recreation services manager position to a department director position with the same level of expectation, with commensurate pay and benefits that a department director would get equal to our other directors. In addition, because of the anticipated demands that this would provide, I'm recommending we hire another full-time staff, and we'll make a couple other minor changes with recreational staff. And in addition, it's waiving all of our recreational program revenues to provide these programs at free and no cost, and I'll walk you through all that. First, quick review of all of our current programs. Pool maintenance. It is very costly to manage and maintain that pool. It is the city's third water treatment facility. We have chemical treatments, we have maintenance contracts, we have to clean it, inspections, we have to get different certifications. It takes a lot just to keep the pool open and usable. We have recreation programs, which I'd call athletics. So this is going to be when we partner with Boys and Girls Club, Napa United. We have different recreational classes, sporting events, adult soccer, youth basketball. We have uniforms, we do activity guides, a whole lot of marketing promotions, just to provide active programs. We have other programs which I categorize as educational type. So lunch and learn series, current event discussions, Arts in April activities that aren't necessarily sports, but that are other education type courses that people would like to participate in. We have senior activities. Over time, the programs we offer to seniors has been growing and expanding. We want to provide special events like trips to the Giants games, holiday dinner, downtown walking tours, and there's just a variety of other, lunch and learn activities, whatever the program might be. The demand for senior programs for people who live here continues to grow, and I can show you in our long-term finance plan that we've been, our costs associated with providing those programs keep growing as we provide more. Community activities are kind of the broad community-wide activities everyone gets to participate in. Safety Day, citywide yard sale, community camp-out movie night. These are programs that everyone gets to participate in. We try and do it as a citywide activity and event. Of course, your aquatics, we all know this. We all spend a lot of time talking about it. You've all been to the pool, but everything from training, hiring lifeguards to swim teams, swim lessons, water aerobics, all these special events and activities, open swim, lap swim. The pool is a pretty robust and active parcel that the property owns this time of year. It's expensive to run it, to have gas and electricity, to clean it. We also have a lot of other, I'll call it ancillary things we have to do to make sure that that facility is always staffed appropriately, is running appropriately, that we're managing our risk. The chances that something could go wrong at that pool are always high. Every hour it's open, there's a risk associated with something happening. So we take a lot of time and effort to provide training, risk management, make sure that our staff are up to date on different rules, procedures, laws. We make sure that we have appropriate contracts. We make sure the school is designed, built appropriately, so on and so forth. When you add up all the different programs, which are going to include a couple of proposals here in a few moments, you can see the total cost of these programs, how it breaks down. The pool is far and away our largest expense. Our other recreation programs is number 2. Pool maintenance is another incredible expense. All of these programs that we do, and regardless of what programs we change to and we add in the future, there's incredible administrative oversight. The way the department works now is you have a recreation manager and one full-time rec coordinator, which we added last year, who basically manage the administration and day-to-day operations of the program. They manage all the recruiting, hiring, training of employees. They manage the contracts with your contractors and vendors. They manage the volunteers. They work on partnership agreements. The risk management is solely on them. When there's an incident, a trip and fall, a bloody toe scraped on a pool, they have to do incident reports. It's an incredible amount of work that 2 full-time staff are doing, in addition to planning new activities. They collaborate with community partners. Recently, when the Boys and Girls Club facility opened up, and when the Monhoff Center became made available, we have facility use agreements with Boys and Girls Club. So we partner with them and we share these facilities. And so bringing, actively using those facilities now, it's required work with Boys and Girls Club, a lot of growing pains, learned lessons, to make sure that we're putting these new assets and facilities to good use, and we're sharing them. But we also anticipate further needs, greater needs. The school district, with the new superintendent, has been very open and willing to share more spaces at the school. So I feel like we're able to offer more public spaces in the future for the programs we want to provide. And of course, don't forget managing those third-party contractors. When someone comes in, legally they're not an agent of the city, but they do represent us. And we need to make sure that we're not placing a convicted felon with your kids. We won't. We don't. But we have to make sure that we're reviewing, we're managing contracts. We do that with all the contractors, the consultants, the volunteers, everyone who comes and works through the department. Current staffing, as I mentioned before, as of May 2017, we had 1 full-time recreation manager and 2 part-time rec coordinators. The 2 full-time equivalent positions, which worked a total of 40 hours a week. It did ebb and flow during the summer months when we operated the pool. In June of last year, we basically created 1 full-time permanent position of a rec coordinator. We didn't change the hours of the management and administrative staff. It remained at 80 hours a week. What I'm recommending right now is that we reclassify the position of recreation manager to a full-time Parks and Recreation director, and we add a second position of a recreation coordinator. It does add an additional 40 hours a week to the administrative side of the program. Just in comparison, the Boys and Girls Club of St. Helena and Calistoga has 4 dedicated full-time staff to their facilities. They have 2 management staff which float between here and St. Helena, and like us, they kind of live and die by your part-time and seasonal staff. And so they have significant numbers that they bring on during certain times of year. When you look at the total cost of the proposal, the first item, we budget this year $88,000 in revenue. That is general fund revenue. They're fees that are paid to your recreation program and activities that come into the general fund to support the program. If we were to simply waive that, it would be an $88,000 impact to the general fund. Your current budget that Gloria just showed you with revenues does not include any revenue from recreation programs. And we'll show you the final numbers down the road. We always look at these costs on a long-term basis. How does this affect our general fund, our fund balance, both now and 5 years out from now? Where are we going to be? When you reclassify the position, currently the position is paid on a salary range that is far lower, in my opinion, than the level of expectation we have for the position. If we reclassified that and made it a director level position, it's a different range. When you factor in the base salary increase, which is about a $30,000 increase, you add in additional costs like the PERS calculation has changed, your Social Security calculation has changed, so the total cost impact would be $38,613 to do that. One of the reasons I believe that that's an important part of this plan is I think the position itself has lended itself to be a, you graduate from school, from college, you come work for a couple of years, and then you move on. And over time, I believe the position has changed, and certainly our level of expectation has changed. We want to see a professional Parks and Rec director, want to see someone who can manage partnerships, can collaborate, can provide extensive services, can work with people, can recruit, can do all these different things. And in addition, that's very similar to what our other department directors do when they manage their own departments. When you look at the additional cost of a full-time recreation coordinator, it's $80,785 for an additional full-time staff person. The way that I'll show the structure in a moment is we would essentially have kind of two sides of the house. You've got a Parks and Recreation director, and then these two recreation coordinators, one who's really overseeing all the pool and aquatics operations, the other who sees the recreation and education programs. Below them, they have all the various staff which are split up, where a pool manager, a senior program coordinator, whatever other activity coordinator is, we'll show that in a moment. The total financial impact of these decisions is an additional, it's a $207,000 impact. $88,000 revenue loss, and the remainder, about $120,000, is an additional expense. The impacts to doing this, certainly we can expect greater participation. We're going to see a greater workload on staff, which I think is reason why we need the additional position. I also think that similar to what's happened with our fire department over time, this transition of going from a volunteer staff, right now we have a lot of volunteer instructors, volunteer coaches. When the expectation level grows, the consistency, reliability, dependability we need from some of those participants also grows. Imagine, now we've got 6 to 12 basketball teams, and you've got a volunteer coach. Well, what happens if that coach doesn't show up? What happens if your volunteer referee doesn't show up? Then you get parents mad, and that's when I get the phone calls. So we'll continue to work with volunteers. We need them. They've always provided a great service here at the city, but I do foresee there being this slow shift, like what happened in the fire department, to needing to have more paid staff. Additionally, we're going to have contract management and risk transfer. If we're bringing in more contractors, bringing in more work, there's going to be more review, more time needed to make sure that the city's not ever at risk of some kind of claim. More participants is going to equal more injuries, more incident reports. That's a given. And I think the last part, which we don't have to define tonight, but this will be part of my challenge for staff, but also something I'll bring back to council in the future, is what's our goal? What are we trying to achieve? What's the appropriate measure of quality of life or appropriate parks and recreation? Is it the participation rate? Is it number of participants? Is it the dollar values? Is it just a satisfaction survey? Are people happy with what we're doing? How do we measure? What if the costs outweigh the value of the program? What if it takes $500 a person to provide this program versus $2 a person to provide this program? Well, they both might equally be important, but one might just be much more cost effective. So that's a difficult thing for us to judge. When people call and I want to do a clarinet camp, well, we may not be able to provide that. That doesn't mean it's not important, but people have expectations. They want to have these kinds of things, and it varies and it ebbs and flows. And then I think the last thing that I would just say now publicly is, for me, my requirement is a hard budget number for staff. If the council approves a budget of $820,000, the number we saw earlier, that's the budget line. We have to hold the line there. We can't come back to city council. If we come back to city council and you change it, that's fine, but the expectation, at least in the beginning, is that's what's been appropriated, that's what you spend until you get additional approval from city council. There are other departmental impacts. So, public works, certainly more calls for maintenance, more calls for cleaning, facilities break, people flushing after hours, lockup, all those kinds of things. Some of those are going to be able to be absorbed into the budget. Many of those will be absorbed in the budget. Stuff breaks, we'll fix it. We can't really anticipate how many more breaks there are, but we wouldn't want to make a decision and not let people use the buildings because you're afraid they're going to break. It'll happen. We'll deal with it. The facility, the wear and tear is going to continue to be, it's going to speed up a little bit more with the more and more people we put through it. Police and fire, as you all know, they respond to the calls for service, so we'll expect some additional calls for service. administrative services, everything from onboarding our new employees, our contractors, doing background checks, to also, issuing paychecks, accounts payable. They're going to see an additional workload. Nothing we can't handle, but those are impacts we wanted to talk about and discuss before we move forward. So I think the final slide that I'd have, and I can go into the long-term projections. I'll discuss that in a minute, but I don't want to put it up there just because it's hard to see, and I can provide copies to council. But before I do that, the other issues that I'd ask council to consider, one, should this, I'll call it the free program, is this in perpetuity or is it on an annual basis? What I would recommend is, just like we do with the budget process, this becomes an annual decision-making process. We've done similar with the free open swim for youth. I'd say we continue to do the same thing. You're not binding yourselves beyond this current fiscal year. You're not binding future city councils. I think it would be hard to go back and forth. Free programs this year, cost next year, free the next. That would be inconsistent, but still, I think it's important to say every year we're going to appropriate money, we're going to waive program fees. The second thing, and this is one of our identified goals for this, or priority projects for this upcoming year, is we currently don't have an equipment and facility replacement plan for facilities and for recreation equipment. One of the identified goals was we need to adopt a CIP for community and recreational facilities. So we'll work on that, we'll have something done, but just be aware that right now we don't have a long-term funding replacement plan for this building, or for Pioneer Park, or the restrooms at the park, or any of the other public facilities that we have. We, is just like anyone in the community, we have needs for indoor and outdoor space too. That's not going to change anytime soon. I don't believe we can have enough park space or indoor recreational space. And then the last thing, and whether you discuss this tonight or in the future, is, should all programs be free? And I could think of a couple examples. Swim lessons, free private swim lessons for residents. How about private swim lessons to Middletown residents? How about private swim lessons when, Johnny and Susie are visiting grandma, who is a Calistoga resident, but they're from Texas? I think in my mind, if the goal is to provide free services to residents, $1 and $2 for a program fee here and there isn't going to matter much in the grand scheme of things, but it is something that should be considered. Non-residents do use our pool, whether they're coming from the region, the state, from out of country, they do use the pool. Facility rentals. So facility rentals, do we provide free facility rentals for the programs like WIC, which are providing great services for women and their kids? How about facility rentals for our downtown businesses who want to use the space for a commercial event? It's kind of a private rental. We have issues where, girls softball, Little League might get free use of a park. What about, an adult private soccer club from Napa wants to use the park? Maybe their employees work up here and now they want to use the park for the day. Or what about just a private activity? People organizing it and just showing up at a park wanting to use it. Do we waive fees for that? So there's a lot of little onesie-twosie things that I think would be appropriate for council to consider. The organizational chart, and it's kind of hard for me this far away to read everything, and I'll just kind of give you the quick gist. Currently, we have 94 bodies which we put in our recreation division. You have a rec manager, a coordinator, all of your volunteer instructors, program managers, facility attendants, and all the pool staff. There's a whole variety of staff. Under the new model, what we would propose essentially changes, as I said before, and align it where there's really these two arms where the rec coordinators are overseeing these different functions of the department under the supervision of the Parks and Recreation Director. So you're going to have kind of your aquatics programs on one side and your other activities on the other, recreation, education, senior. And I think for now, that's a very good and appropriate model. The way we'll kind of shift some of the staff positions around, which are seasonal staff, part-time staff, we're actually going to add a few more positions and just move things around for a total of 100 bodies that we would put to manage and oversee these programs. If council wishes, I can bring up the forecast. What I have before you, and I can show you, I can send it out, we'll make it publicly available. It's a worksheet which has probably 15 columns. So it goes back as far as 2009 and 10 when the city had $16,000 in the general fund balance. A long time ago. And this current year, we just saw a budget number where this, at the end of June 30 this year, we're going to end with about little over $7.5 million in fund balance. So we've consciously been making these decisions, this council, previous council, about how do we right that financial ship and improve our position. We haven't even started getting into the future revenues that the resorts will bring in. Since December, but starting January to this year, we're hitting historic highs each month in hotel tax collections. The average daily rate or the number of rooms, the occupancy rate, those are changing and ebbing and flowing. So it's not one versus the other on any given month, but each April we collect more in hotel tax money than we've received in any April years prior. May, same thing. May we don't have yet, so I might be a little bit too ahead of myself on May. Looking at the long-term forecast of the Recreation Department, currently we budgeted $827,000 in expenses, and we project a 4% increase for all of our staff costs, contract costs in the years moving out. When you look at our projected costs in 2024, which is an additional 5 years down the road after this budget we're adopting, we're at just over $1 million. That's assuming the same spending, same staffing, same programs. That's for the Recreation Department. So it becomes a department that costs about $1 million to operate. Switching and looking at our general fund forecast, when you look at our total revenues, currently we project about $13 million in revenues. This includes all the grants, all the one-time revenues, everything we get current year. When we look at these future years in 2024, which includes the additional property tax assessed valuation increases, when we look at the additional hotel tax collections from 2 resorts, which we expect to be up online, and we use conservative numbers for them, we expect to have a general fund revenue approximately $19 million. I believe that's a very conservative number. I also believe that when we look at expenses, we just assume a 4% increase in expenses in the years moving out. So our fund balance, which at the end of this adopted budget will be about $5.4 to $5.7 million, which meets your 50% debt fund balance reserve. We expect the fund balance, assuming current revenues projections, current expense projections, to be at $20 million. That was the same slides that you saw several months ago. That's where we project our fund balance to be right now. That's why, as a community, when we talk about future of the fairgrounds, prioritize money, future, setting aside money to pay for pension, paying for roads and infrastructure. This council has made those decisions to prepare us for this kind of revenue. And even though we don't have revenue built into this year's budget for the Silver Rose, we expect by June 30 or July 1, the next fiscal year, to start seeing revenue collected from that resort, which will be very substantial. I believe also, and just moving on to kind of the next step slides for us, I believe we've been very conservative with our revenue estimates. We budget, I think, very conservatively too. We have taken our money that we're receiving now and funding necessary improvements in infrastructure, like setting money aside for new equipment, paving, a quarter of our streets in this community, setting money aside for future capital projects and debt. So I think when the times are good, we've been appropriately paying for the things we should be paying for, investing in our infrastructure. Next steps at this point, if council approves this plan, there's some further action which would be required by City Council. We have to adopt a job description. There's an actual code amendment which would happen for a Parks and Recreation Director. Those would return to City Council for approval. City Manager approves an employment contract, so we draft an employment contract identical to the other department directors. We'd immediately start on work with hiring our new rec coordinator position. We already have a job description. We're just adding a new position as part of the budget. And then we immediately start the outreach plan. We need to partner with some agencies on how can we provide more free programs. More importantly, we need to communicate programs are free. Personally, I think it might be worth our time to think about how do we solicit donations for worthwhile causes, not necessarily city causes. Saw a program a couple weeks ago from Calistoga Promise? Do we want to try and get donations for Calistoga Promise? Do we have a special project that people could adopt? And hey, it's a free program, but maybe you can consider donating for this service. Something we could think about. Specifically for staff, aside from hiring positions, we got to look at our department restructuring. One of the exciting things I'm excited about is we've recently approved a contract for a new software for recreation, for the recreation program. The software allows people to sign up, to register, to do a lot more than they could do before. In addition, it allows us to track staff, to schedule staff. We could do a lot of custom reports. It is so much more versatile than the last piece of software that we had. We're excited to be implementing that now, rolling it out soon. The last part for me is really identifying that feedback, that survey tool of, how are we doing? Which program should we provide? Is it successful or not successful? And that'll be a key item that I want the recreation, if approved, the Parks and Rec director to identify is how do we measure success? That's my long-winded presentation. Believe it or not, we're still not done. I know Gloria still has a few more comments, talk about some other important parts of the enterprise funds budgets and the capital improvement budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have now, or we can continue with the last few minutes of her presentation before questions and comment, whatever you prefer.
Or continue through the budget process.
I think, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions about this particular program that I'd like to ask, and maybe it's easier to do it now than come back to it. I don't know how the other
Yep, that's what I was going to recommend. Councilmember Kraus.
Yes, Dylan, you brought up something that was on my mind, and that is how do you deal with folks that are non-residents? And I remember we went through this discussion when you opened up the pool for free to kids under 18. And basically all they had to do was show us something that said Calistoga on it, that some kind of a valid utility bill, or maybe not a kid would have a utility bill, but a school ID, something like that, and they could.
I think all they had to do is recite their zip code at one point.
Yeah, you have to know what the zip code is. And I think we extended that on out to the whole school district, which is in the unincorporated areas of this county as well as going into Sonoma County. And so I think that certainly those, that same population should have the advantage of these recreation services. I also consider them to be taxpayers here because they come in, they shop in town, they may go to a restaurant in town or something. So, there's some validity there, I think. As far as someone coming down from Middletown, I don't know how we're going to deal with that. That's something we'll have to have discussion about later. But one suggestion I might have is that we coordinate with the city of St. Helena. And if we have a program up here that's free, and we have someone from St. Helena that wants to come on up, perhaps they give us some free spots down in a program down in St. Helena. I don't know what those things might be, but certainly I think it's worth looking into. There's a lot of things that are common between the two cities, and so maybe that helps out. I don't know. But I'm very much in favor of proceeding on this. And to reiterate, this is not just for the kids of the community. The water aerobics would be free. Adult basketball, do we still have that program going, or is that over at the... We didn't have it. Well, maybe we're going to have it because it's free now. Yeah. So, all of these programs that adults would participate in could also be involved in for free. I think that's great. The other thing is I recognize that on 2 occasions this council has had a presentation by members of this community, and I forget right now what their group is called. Luis is here. They've been meeting regularly, and their concern is recreational opportunities in this community. And I think this is a step towards that. This is how we get going on helping to fulfill those dreams that people have for better recreation opportunities and more things in town for kids to do. One of the things that I know, because I was a kid myself 60 years ago, or 60-something years ago, is that if I didn't have something that was planned for me to do, I figured out something for me to do, and it didn't always please my parents what that was. So I think that having organized activities for kids is a step in the right direction and beneficial to the community as a whole. Thank you.
Other council members? Councilmember Barnes?
I would assume these programs that we're talking about would include, say, the rental of Pioneer Park, which would no longer be a rental for, say, somebody like the American Legion, which I've been involved in renting the park. Would nonprofits be able to avail themselves of these facilities freely? Because you rent it for a fundraiser. It's not onerous. I think it was $300 to rent the park for the afternoon. But $300 to the American Legion is $300. And I'm sure the Rotary and Sir Optimist and the other folks would like to participate in that. Would it extend to folks like that? And if it does, we'd have to talk about liquor liability. We'd have to talk about increased insurance. We'd have to talk about increased insurance anyhow for many, many more participants in the swim program and the other thing. So there may be some more cost involved through our insurance program too. But if you could structure a fill-in-the-blanks type of application for these deals, that could go a long way to ameliorate some of that stuff as well.
So the way that it's...
Before you get into the weeds on this, because I can see us dissecting all of this.
Yes.
Let's go, I think a good rule of thumb that we've used in the past is if you're a 501c, a registered 501c3, 5, or 6, facilities are free. If you're in Calistoga for a wedding, you pay for it. If you're in here for a commercial endeavor, you pay for the facilities. We've kind of used that benchmark in the past. In terms of and this comes on the residency side, my fear or my concern is the word gets out, Calistoga has free recreation. Guess how many people make it over the mountain from Lake County and Sonoma County on a daily basis to take advantage of the free.
And then our kids and our seniors are crowded out.
So I think there has to be some sort of residency requirement. We can address the Johnny and Susie who come visit grandma for the summer. She's a resident, we can accommodate that. But I think the moment you don't have any kind of residency requirement, we're providing free rec services for everyone other than our own residents, and that becomes a concern. So in terms of the fee collection from those standpoint, some things you need to take into consideration on that. And I know we started to get to that with the community grants that we were giving. I feel very strongly you are not a nonprofit unless you are a registered nonprofit. There's no other way to kind of benchmark and feel your way through that. It just becomes too complicated, and it's an easy benchmark for us to use. And same with residency. But
I think that's good feedback. I think what we'll do at this point is we follow up with whatever information. We'll use the 501c3 status. If it's a city program we're offering it, they can participate. They don't need insurance. But if someone's renting a facility, assuming liability on that, they need to have some kind of organization. I think that's a good point. Just to not go into the details to answer your question, Jim, the city should not be waiving any kind of liability, liquor liability, anything.
Correct.
Everybody who uses a city facility will be required to provide the right documentation to make sure that they have got insurance and so on and so forth. If someone comes here and wants to have a party, that's fine, they can use it, but if someone gets hurt on their watch, that's not on the city's liability. So that'll be on them. So we'll make sure the right insurance proceeds. But I would see everybody with the nonprofit status gets their fees waived. They still have to have the right insurance. One thing we did start offering this last year, is they can purchase special event insurance through our insurance carrier. They have that option, they don't have to, but it is available.
That's where I was going to. That way you ensure that insurance is there.
Exactly.
it's legit.
Yep.
Other Iris, anything?
No, solo quería comentarles brevemente que lo que están hablando aquí es acerca de los servicios que va a dar el Departamento de Parques y Recreaciones. Se está discutiendo si los servicios van a ser gratis para la población en general. Las clases que se hacen en la alberca y algunas otras clases, y se está discutiendo si van a ser, es posible hacerlas gratis para todos los residentes de Calistoga, pero van a tener que probar que son residentes de aquí de la ciudad. Eso es básicamente lo que se está discutiendo ahorita.
Thank you.
Um,
Michael?
Yeah, so I'm very much in favor of the free programming, for kids or seniors. I do not think everything should be free. I just generally have a problem with that. And you brought up a lot of different types of things that come up that I guess I would have an issue with if the city was not charging, I guess, people from Texas or something like that. I just feel like if there's an opportunity to capture some revenue, that revenue over time, it all kind of adds up. And I see that we have other important needs, such as building new facilities to further benefit, the people that live here. And I don't want to get into the micromanagement or determining like what's going to be free and what's not. I think that should just be you and staff to figure that out. I just think, there's some things, and I don't even know what they are, because I know there's such a long list. But I think there's some things that there should be a fee, a reasonable fee, and the intent from, I think, at least from my perspective, when we had our other council meeting with staff to go over this, was that the intent was to try to get increase our participation level with our recreational programs. We don't want to have any barriers, and we are absolutely willing and supportive to do whatever we can to accomplish that. But that can also lead, if everything's free, that can potentially lead to other problems. And so I just think we need to be walk before we run. And I think just opening the whole thing up, I don't know what those problems could be. Rachel will have a better sense of that than I will, and so will you. So I would just like to use a little bit of caution.
I think it's going to be a work in progress, and I think we're going to get experience as we go along. And I think that things that don't work out as well as we thought they would in the next fiscal year, we can make adjustments next fiscal year to correct those issues. But like you say, we're in a lot of uncharted territory, and we're going to make some mistakes, and we're going to do some great things.
This council has said for a long time talked a long time about the importance of park and recreation for all of our residents, and I think this goes a long way in demonstrating how serious we are. It is a significant financial impact. I agree. We should leave, assuming we approve this creation of a department. I'll leave the details but I would like input requested on some of the details, because even though well-intended, if something goes afoul, we're the recipients of that drama and trauma. So if we could help understand the logic on the front end of why decisions were made. And then in terms of the staffing, my only strong recommendation, and staffing is the city manager's responsibility, is if we are going to add a recreation coordinator, I think it's mandatory that one of the two recreation coordinators, if not both ideally, must be bilingual. It has to be a requirement of the position. You have that opportunity to do that, and I think it has to be a must. One of the two, if not both. But you can come back with a recommendation on that. And in terms of the rec services being free, you mentioned this year. I'm assuming we're going to let the plan is, and I'm looking at Rachel, let this recreation summer happen as is? Okay. I didn't want to see a mad dash and scramble So this is for the next summer season. What's the first rec activity that we have coming up? Okay. Okay. So if it's a January 1st setup, then, 2019, then I would recommend we do that, because you're going to need time to get staffed, get oriented, et cetera. Okay. Any other questions on this? Any questions of the public specific to the creation of a department, not of the budget impact yet? Okay, I know you have, yours is facilities and programs, or is it specific to this, Luis? Okay. All right, so continue on. Gloria, please. After, right? So is your question, Luis, about the, okay, sure, please. Should you so choose, share with us your name and address, but you are not required to do so.
Well, my name is Luis Bernal. I live in 1445 Lake Street, Calistoga. And first, good evening to everyone. I'm representing the Grupo Adelante. And, well, let me explain who we are first. We are a bunch of residents, Calistoga residents, dreaming isolated about recreation park that we serve. We noticed that there is 4 parks, mostly used for under 12 years, but there's no activities after 5 p.m. And all the activities are being planned for early times, mostly. But someday, somebody said, can we make a recreation program? And somebody said, well, why not? Let's try it. Our isolated ideas become one, for Calistoga Recreation Park, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Since one day, we've been gathered for a year and some days, almost weekly. We are volunteers, and as you know it's very hard nowadays. But our concern it's about the benefits, the healthy and recreational benefits for our kids, teens, adults, and seniors. They are bigger than, or concern is bigger than our obstacles that we might find. This element turned this project in a beautiful experience where we've been working together as a family. We started believing we can. It's in our hands to make it happen. Then our dreams moved to goals. Why, where, and how, and so on. Right now, we are proud of what we have achieved so far. And we are hungry and ready for our next step, working together with you. We want to be positive, like always, and we are sure that there is somehow we can work out this together. We want to thank you, all of you, for your great support and keep us going in this project. And don't forget that the best is to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. And we will, as we create, if indeed we do create this standalone department or a freestanding park and recreation department as an enhancement, we will be reaching out to our stakeholders, and Adelante has done an amazing job of collecting a lot of that shareholder and stakeholder feedback, so we would certainly make you part of that process, so thank you. Anyone else want to comment on the park and recreation element of this? All right, I'll close that comment. Gloria, take us through the rest, and there'll be another opportunity to discuss budgetary items at the end of this for public comment.
All right, thank you. So back to general fund sources and uses and how we anticipate in the fiscal year 17-18. Again, ending fund balance 7.2 million, and our proposed budget 18-19 $5.5 million. Something new that we've added is the capital reserve fund, where we're setting aside money for future capital projects, and in 1819 we plan to set aside $200,000. Going to move into the enterprise funds. The first one is the water fund. So based on the new rates that are going into effect May 1st, we've revised our total operating revenues to $2.8 million for 17-18, and then for fiscal year 18-19, we're about a full year, it should be about $4 million on our revenues. Our expenditures, 17-18, 3.2, and in 18-19, there's an increase of $200,000, which is 5.8% increase. So our estimated fund balance for 18-19 is $727,098, and for fiscal year 18-19, a little bit over $1 million, so 44.5% increase in our working capital. This one here, I think one of the largest expenditures for the treatment plant is the contracted supplies and chemicals, and of course the cost of water. Capital improvement fund sources and uses. 17-18, we anticipate an ending fund balance of $980,440. 18-19, with the one-time impact fees of $358,743. We're also requesting a transfer from the Water Operations Fund of $282,648 to be able to complete the capital projects that the Public Works Department has suggested for 18-19. So we end with a zero working capital for our Capital Improvement Projects Fund. Our wastewater, for 17-18, we're expected in with a surplus of a little over $1 million. And here we're also recommending a transfer of $131,348 in 18-19 to the capital improvement project for capital projects. And based on the activity, we're anticipating that our wastewater ending working capital will be $541,263. This just kind of shows you a graph of our expenditures. And again, contract services are a big expenditure, lab routine tests, maintenance services, and filter media replacement. And you can see our debt structure for 17-18 was $696,147, and then 18-19 it's reduced to $666,707, so about a $30,000 decrease in our debt service payments. Capital Improvement Fund for the wastewater, anticipating in 17-18 with a little bit over $1 million. 18-19, we're going to spend all that $1 million plus $923,000 from one-time impact fees, again on capital projects. Here's an estimate of what we're expecting in our development impact fees, a total of almost $1.7 million. The projects anticipating are the Craftsman Inn, Rivers Marie Winery, 2 single residence homes, expansion of Solage, some single-family dwellings for Silver Rose. I'm going to go quickly through these capital projects. I know we've discussed this in great details when we had our budget workshop and also in our public hearing. The only change was that we reduced the pavement maintenance from $2 million to $1.8 million, and this was because there was a savings in one of the projects that we anticipate in 18-19. Most of the funding will come from general fund. One of the largest projects, the culvert repair, Grant Street, $1.1 million will be coming from Measure A funding, and then we've got community pool, $30,000 project that will be coming from our capital lease 2007 financing that we did. And here's a little breakdown of the pavement maintenance and what Public Works is anticipating to do: Lake Street Phase, Washington Street, Lincoln to Berry, Berry to North Oak, Spring Street, and there's also some design for the 2019-20 projects, $100,000. So again, $1.8 million for the pavement maintenance. Here's our capital projects for water, $3.1 million. in capital projects for the water. Big majority coming from one-time connection fees. As Mike had spoken earlier, hazard mitigation grant for the repair of phage tank, 1.5 million, and also 100,000 from still remaining money that we have from Measure A that we haven't spent. In our wastewater capital projects, almost 2.4 million. Again, hazard mitigation grant for the restoration of the Riverside Ponds, 187,500, but everything else comes from one-time connection fees. These are our special revenue funds, and these all come from our Metropolitan Transportation Commission, TDA grants, 828,161 in projects. The equipment replacement fund, this is where we set aside money, or we've got, you know, a one-time annual subscriptions, we've got computers to purchase, we've got a couple of equipments that the staff has recommended, and we're anticipating our ending fund balance 17-18, 713,441, and 18-19 we get an increase of about almost 12% of $798,036. And again, here's just a list of those projects that we're anticipating. Like I said, and one other thing I want to mention is that we plan to set aside $100,000 for a future finance software reserve. We've had a program that's getting a little bit to be too old. It's been around way before I started in my finance career, and I never thought I'd come see it again until I came here to Calistoga. But, you know, it does its job. Could use something a little bit more robust, something a little bit quicker, but it's worked fine, you know, so far. Special revenue funds. This is our sources and uses, 2018-19. Again, these are earmarked for specific purposes. 17-18, we're anticipating ending 8.3, 18-19, 8.5. We've got 2 slides on what the community funding requests were, and these are the items that you find now under the city manager's section that we moved out of the Parks and Rec. 274,893 in total set aside for the different community events, activities that need to be that have been requested. This one's kind of small, but here's our total debt for 2018-19. We start out with 16.9 at the beginning of the year, and we end with 15.8, so a little bit over $1 million. If we, in principal, we pay 1.1 million, interest $412,000. This one is our general fund reserves. 2017-18, we're anticipating 7.2 million, which is 77.9% of revenues. I know the council goal is to have at least 50%, so we meet that goal. And then for fiscal year 18-19, we're anticipating at 5.5 million, and again, we'll be at 54.5%. So again, meeting that 50% goal. And the last slide is just a recap of where we plan to end our fund balances for all of our funds. So general fund, 5.5. The water fund, a little bit over $1 million. Water capital, again, 0. Wastewater operations, 541,000. Capital, 0. Equipment replacement, $798,036. And our special revenue, 8.5 million. Total, when you add those all up, 16.5 million as opposed to 20 million, so a reduction of 4 million. But you saw the capital projects we're anticipating. I think it's about 9.5 million in capital projects earmarked for 18-19. I don't know if the city manager has any more comments to make, or.
No, certainly council will answer questions, but Gloria, I just want to say thanks for all your hard work during the budget process.
All right, council members, questions, overall budget.
I don't know, we've massaged it pretty well for the last 4 or 5 months, so
Yeah.
I think it's a good budget. I'm satisfied. Good job, Gloria.
Anyone else?
I just have one question. Under
Please.
which category of the entity requesting will be the request for the Grupo Adelante.
Dylan, how are you handling the request from the Adelante presentations we received?
Yep, so when we received the presentation on May 10th, my understanding from the council discussion was before we proceed and authorize any specific funds, it was to whether it's a landscape architect, someone to come in and update master plans. Currently, we have one for Lokeview Park. We don't have one for Lower Washington. And so that was the direction that I received, and we haven't entered into a contract yet. But right now, currently, if you go to your capital improvement projects for all of our general fund related facilities, which is going to be slide 27. If you add total, I'll call it park and space related items, there's $240,000 budgeted. Set aside $25,000 specifically for Lokeview Park, $30,000 for Tedeschi Field, Bridge. At the community pool, we've set aside $30,000, and at the community center Sharpstain, which is different, there's 30 as well. In addition, $45,000 to design the park and trailhead that we discussed earlier tonight to do the design engineering work. So there are currently funds included in the budget. There's one of the items that was specifically discussed. There are two items. That one were park tables, picnic tables, place where people could recreate. Second one was a trail that continues the trail around the parking lot. I think the number that was discussed was $25,000 on the slides. We know from the actual work we just did on that 400-foot section along Washington Street that was a $100,000 section of trail, which was sidewalk as well as lighting. So we have a little bit of work in design engineering to do to finish the trail. It's already part of the master plan, but assuming we want to do any significant changes, the direction was to do get some renderings to actually adopt an updated master plan before we do those.
And that would be done in this fiscal year?
Correct.
Current one we're sitting in, or the one we're approving?
The one we're discussing.
It'll be the next one. This current fiscal year ends June 30, so it'll be this next fiscal year. When we have a plan, whatever it is that we're going to do, there's certainly going to be other input we'll want to offer to the other groups as well. But whenever we decide what to adopt, typically in the past it's been come back to City Council, here's what we have, and whether we're moving a project out of the budget, whether we're appropriating unused fund balance, again, we still have several $100,000 above our minimum 50% threshold. If you want to choose to spend that money, you could do that. It'd be the similar process we used for like the artificial lawn over at Pioneer Park. We just bring the item back to council when it's ready.
And we may have some savings in the budget. We seem to always find some corner to chip a little money away from, and sometimes we get more money than we anticipated from a property tax or other revenue sources that generally come in. We're usually pretty conservative in our estimates, I've noticed, and with the exception of this year, because of the fires took so much of a chunk out of our economy here. We usually meet those goals and exceed them, so should be some news probably by midterm that we'll have a good idea, and then hopefully by the middle of the year we'll have this master plan done, and we'll have some numbers so maybe we can entertain making some improvements at that point.
When we end the fiscal year, we look at all the revenues, the unexpected revenues. We won't spend as much money as on staff or whatever. We had a couple positions vacant. There will be a difference, and so typically what we'll do is we'll bring that back to council. Here's what we expect it to be. You can appropriate funds at that time. I would suggest if you are wanting to commit funds now, we're not sure exactly how much we would need to commit. We're not sure exactly what we would need to be doing, assuming we're just doing a section of trail to finish that pathway. We could probably put some estimates together in not a significant amount of time, depending on if there are other activities, what the long-term vision is, what we want to see there. I'm not sure. That might take a little bit more time. Certainly expect we could have something for a trail before the end of this construction season. For other stuff, other planning-related activities, I think it would probably take a little bit more time, especially considering if we want to go get more additional public input if that's needed.
So understanding we've got about 25,000 set aside for Logby master planning. 2 requests, which I'm assuming you would do anyway. Some of the work that's already been done by Adelante will be taken into consideration for the master planning. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to be more deliberate and more specific and set aside of some funds for some of the projects that were proposed or some of the concepts that were proposed. So understanding we'll close this fiscal year in a couple of weeks, and very shortly after that we'll know what our overage is. We're clearly going to have overage. I would like to challenge the group to come back to us with a prioritized list with costs, not estimates, costs, and challenge this council to give you some money for that. Okay, so that's on the radar screen here. And whatever you don't spend on that $25,000 and the master planning of Logby, since we already have a partial master plan, that could be up for grabs at some point as well.
So just as kind of a joke, I could ask my staff to spend every dollar that they've been allocated, spend all the, I'm just teasing, totally teasing. Appreciate everyone being here. We'll make sure we give direction to staff that that's something we want to be doing, is how can we free up money for these kinds of projects. I would say, we can do, there's some other options we have to, once we define what it is we want to do. I mean,
Gloria, generally when do we know how much money we have generated versus budget after we close this fiscal?
Usually we don't close the year probably till August and September. Yeah, because we're doing...
Thumb in the air?
No.
Directionally, we'll know whether we have like 10,000 or hundreds of thousands pretty soon.
Right, because, I mean, we still have June invoices coming in July at the end of August still, usually...
But those are
2 months behind,
projected. Okay.
kind of deal. So.
Do we use an encumbrance system so that if someone has purchased something, one of the departments purchased something this month, but they don't get the bill until 30 days later or something, that puts it into July, do we encumber that money out of this budget, or we just roll the unspent portion into that department's next year budget?
We roll the unspent. By now they know whether it's going to be received or not, so they should have put it in their 18-19 budget if they knew they weren't going to receive
Okay.
or the contract work wasn't going to be done.
So it's not spent until you write the check.
And a couple other questions. The animal services and diversion program, we moved out of the PD budget and moved into, what are you calling it, Gloria?
It's under the community support and enrichment grants, so it's under now the city manager's budget.
So clearly I didn't pay attention during the meeting when we did that. What was the logic? I mean, animal services has traditionally
It's just the
Public health and safety.
It's just the contract. There's contract review. It's renewed on a term basis. It's just something that consolidates it with all the other things. There's a lot of additional benefits. It was putting everything together so it's found one place in the budget. If you were to ask the police department if they, Mitch does a great job. I don't know if Mitch is here. They don't have all the updated contracts. They just have maybe a current contract.
Okay.
So it's making sure they're centralized in my office upstairs.
So it's an administrative issue. Okay. And then for clarification's sake, you have it right on the print, but you stated the destination marketing increase occurred this year. That is not the funding of the Chamber of Commerce increase that happened this year. You are funding a destination marketing agreement executed by the Chamber of Commerce. You're not funding the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
I just want that out there before the conspiracy theorists get on Nextdoor and start spouting again. That's what you're doing.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, council members, on this budget? Anyone in the public wish to address this? Yes, please, Luis, from the podium. Because we have people at home that we're live now, but we're recording this for.
My name's Luis, and my question is, there's a deadline for when you're gonna decide when you're gonna use the money, because if sometimes the money it's a problem, we can break our piggy bank and cooperate with something. I always say we can work together. There's somehow we can make it happen. So it's not all of you, it's all of us too. So this is Calistora.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? But you are going to come back to us with a prioritized list and what it costs, right? Because otherwise, we're going to, as Dylan said, we'll spend it on something else.
And we're looking forward to having community actual labor in installing that stuff too, because you promised that as well.
All right, anyone else? All right, council, we've seen this multiple times. Gloria, sincerely, you did a great job again. All of your department heads have done a great job on this. Dylan, you as well. I will entertain a motion on this item as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. I was looking for some more words, but I ran out. We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. I'll give that to her again. Jim, you okay with that? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now adjourned to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Kathy, when is that? July 17th. Thank you, everyone.